Awesome. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, sweet. By way of introduction, my name is Levi. I've been coming to the Midday Connect for the past couple of months, so I've met a lot of you, but for those who don't know me, I'm a senior at BYU studying business management. I'm done at the end of this next semester, which I'm super excited for. I've been working with Summit Venture Studios since the beginning of this year on this project. This project was licensed out of BYU, and our company is called Graduly, where we help students stay and universities save by providing financial wellness solutions. Let's go, okay. So the problem that we're trying to solve is universities' broken funnel. So universities will spend a lot of time and energy into acquiring a student. The cost to acquire a student varies by public or private school. Public schools are a little bit less because they have a lot more brand recognition. So it's around $500, but $2,500 for private schools. Once students are admitted, enrolled into a university, start taking classes and paying tuition, the problem is 40% of all of those students will drop out. I've been talking to Boise State over the past couple of months, and they lose $1 million in tuition revenue every semester from students who drop out. This isn't just a problem for Boise State, though. 36 universities have closed since the start of the COVID era. 1/3 of all colleges are in danger of shutting down because of enrollment and retention concerns. And then in 2008, during the Great Recession, people stopped having as many kids. So from 2025 to 2029, there's going to be a loss of 500,000 eligible students purely because of population. That's from the university side. From the student side, why are they dropping out? Students drop out for a lot of different reasons, but the primary reason is financial. Students need to go to work, they can't afford school, or they have family obligations. Here is where Graduly comes into play. Graduly is a student loan simulator where we help students understand their budget and how much they can afford to take out in student loans. This was developed at BYU by our inventor, Paul Conrad. Paul, when he was meeting with students, saw that a lot of students didn't have an awareness to what their financial situation was. So what he'd do is on a piece of paper, he'd write down what their expenses were: rent, transportation, eating out, and tuition each semester. What resources did they have in terms of scholarships and grants? And then he wrote down their loan information. So he put that piece of paper into a software, which is the technology that we licensed. We've seen two main use cases where this is really helpful in helping the dropout problem. First is students who are debt adverse, students who are scared about taking out any sort of student loans, which is really prevalent in Utah, where there's kind of a bad culture around debt. And then the other one is students who made poor financial decisions where they took out a lot of student loan debt early. And because of this tool, they have an awareness to where they went wrong and what they can do in the future to move forward with their financial situation. We've got a lot of positive feedback. I've been talking to a lot of university financial wellness and aid counselors. They said this tool is a great objective way to show my students their financial loan information. Students have really liked the tool. They said, this got me thinking about what habits I need to change so that I can afford school. Because I'm here, I'd love to leverage the Midday Connect network with an ask. Right now, I've been focusing on financial wellness, but financial wellness, they really like the tool, but they don't have budget for the tool. So I'm looking to talk to people in the financial aid offices, student success and enrollment, as well as high school CTE programs to see if they'd be interested in the tool, as well as if they have purchasing power for this tool as well. But I'm happy to take any questions now.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi. And yeah, if anybody can help out with want to ask introductions, anything like that, please reach out to Levi. Levi, maybe you can post your...
Andy, I put my LinkedIn in the chat, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn too.
All right. Somewhere in the chat, you can search down Levi's contact info. But we got a couple of questions here. Levi, how is this different from other budgeting tools in the market?
Yeah, so our main differentiator is that it's a simulator rather than a calculator. So a lot of calculators put on by the government or by banks or institutions show you kind of a screenshot of your situation. With our tool, you can simulate different plans, different spending plans, what you can pay for expenses and for what type of scholarships or grants you can get. And it's made mainly for financial wellness counselors. So if we go to the tool, financial counselors can help you figure out what sort of scholarships or grants you can do, or they're aware of the situation on campus, so they can help you with all of these different expenses.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the business model? Another question from Rob here. How do we plan to make money with Graduly?
Yeah, so right now, that is something that we are exploring. I've been talking, so we started Graduly a month and a half ago, and I've been talking to financial wellness centers and seeing if they would have the ability to pay for it. They really like the tool, but what we've seen is they don't have the ability to pay for it. So we're trying to launch a SaaS business. So we're trying to do an annual subscription. But right now we're kind of testing that out and seeing who has the ability to pay for it.
So Eric, you had some comments. I think you can come back after Levi. He had some feedback on the deck that he recommended, but also Eric, you made a comment about revenue should come from school boards. You want to talk about that? And I don't know if you have a question for Levi, but.
Well, I was just struggling to try and find, this may come in even earlier than the universities, that this could be something that you could be selling to juniors and seniors in high school. And the school boards at that level could be teaching them what to look out for. But it would also be something that the schools would want to advertise, because I think you did a very good job of presenting the case why universities should be concerned that they're going to lose these students. It was hard to read the fonts on when you talk about the students, the little bar graph, the sideways bar graph.
Okay.
But if it can be made clear to either one of them as to where their revenue is going to come from, that's going to make a better sell. But I think that the schools are going to probably be a more consistent source of income as opposed to students that are struggling as it is. So if you're looking for money, go to the schools.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback. I think we are piloting with Provo school districts. So we are definitely exploring that route, but definitely going through schools rather than students is something that we've thought a ton about.
All right, we're going to go to Dale, and this may be our last question. We'll see if we have time for one more. Dale, you want to go ahead?
This is just a reflection back. I'm working on a big K-12 SaaS product discovery engagement right now, and I just spoke with a high school counselor who said that she's required to have like a transition slash what do you call it, like college / trade readiness plan in place with every student in her 300 plus students that are on her caseload. So I want to echo the potential channel of high schools, specifically high school guidance counselors that are trying to get students placed on some kind of a path after school. I think that could be I think you need to at least talk to some of those people, that audience, to discover what some of their pain points are around educating students and preparing them financially for college. That's just an audience that I think you should talk to and consider. Okay,
great. No, that's great feedback. And I'd love to connect with you, Dale, further and see if I can get that contact. That would be a great person for me to talk to.
Happy to talk.
Awesome. All right, Levi, great job. Nice, concise pitch. I thought, problem solution laid out really well. Let's work on the business model, figure out who's going to pay you money for it. But really well done. Rob, you want to take it away with the next?
Yeah, so up next is Thomas Keene. So I haven't seen Thomas's pitch, so I'm excited about it. But Thomas is the technical director at Kobold's Keene. So Thomas, you want to do a screen share, and I will help track time and questions for you when you're ready. Saw Thomas on here. Thomas, are you? There you go.
Is that working?
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me? I can't. I'm not getting an audio indicator.
We got you now. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. let's see, which screen is it sharing?
Your Google Drive, Summit Pitch 5. So you're
The whole
Yep.
desktop is the sharing.
Both screens? I told it to only do the one.
Now it's just the
There,
the-
okay, yeah,
yeah.
that's fine.
you get a
Next
screen view.
slideshow.
All right. Hello, I'm Thomas from Kobold Keep Video Games. I am a software engineer. I'm the technical director at our company, and we are a software startup making small independent video games. To introduce myself, I'm a software engineer with 10 years of experience in the games industry. I've made software for PC, Xbox, PlayStation, mobile, and various virtual reality headsets, and also a few telepresence apps. Everything you see here is various tech demos or footage from the things I've produced on my own. And I also have a few other fun hobbies like composing music and writing. Anything you see in this presentation that looks good is thanks to my art director, Madeline Keene. She is an animator and a comic artist who has been working for about 10 years in various freelance roles. She makes cutscenes for video games, usually animated stuff like you see in the lower left corner there. And she also has a significant experience making assets for video games, such as animated characters and character sprites and models and animations. So both of us have a significant experience in the video game industry, making stuff, putting it together, making it look good, play testing it, and shipping it on storefronts. Mainly, the software we made has been sold on digital storefronts like Steam, where users can purchase the software, a license for the software digitally, install it on their device, and play it. I have one of my specialties is actually porting software to different consoles and mobile devices. We have all the experience we need to create and publish and sell video games on these platforms. Over the last few years, we actually ran into an issue, though. Sorry, did someone say something? Oh, I don't think you're muted. Sorry. Where was I? Oh, right, prototypes. So over the last couple of years, we made a few prototypes to try and get our company off the ground, but we ran into some pretty significant problems. We were showing these prototypes to play testers, family and friends, and having them play them, and we found that we had gotten very good designs on these things, but when we sat down and budgeted out all of our time to ship them, we realized we did not have the money or time to finish these projects, so we had to shelve them and move on to getting contracting roles to pay bills and all that. We're confident we can sell these things. We just have been trying to find a project that fits the scope of what we can ship. And we're also looking for funding to help us get these things over the finish line. We are confident that we can make plenty of money doing these because there's a lot of people in the industry already doing this. These are some examples here of model studios we've been trying to pattern our business model off of. They tend to create very interesting looking, cute experiences, usually with a runtime of 20 hours or less. We actually think there is a underserved niche in the market for games that you can finish in a weekend. We think our target audience is going to be 30-something couples who probably have children and who have a little bit of spending money, but not much time. You don't want to sit down and play something like Destiny or FF14 or World of Warcraft that expects you to be treated like a lifestyle or a second job. We want to make something small and self-contained and interesting that also would be appealing, that you could play with your family. We're specifically trying to avoid over-sexualized and hyper-violent tropes that you find very often in the video game industry to make more family-friendly and wholesome content. These companies here have been able to make tens of millions of dollars doing that sort of development, and we're confident we're able to match that kind of quality. Hi Dexter. Looking over these competitors, to summarize this plan, we're trying to make 1 to 2 small games per year until we get a hit. The video games industry is very hit driven. You'll very frequently release and have small numbers of sales, and only due to some fluke of marketing or some YouTuber covering your game or or getting mentioned by some large influencer, does your game really take off and sell millions of units. Most games do not make their money back. That is simply the nature of the industry, though I understand that's the same for most startups. We're in the even if we can't get a hit, we are confident that if we can cultivate a small, loyal fan base of about 20,000 customers who will buy everything we make, we can still get our company in the black and be able to continue funding just off of the royalties we earn from the software we sell. By focusing on our strengths as a studio that can pivot quickly and has a very small operating budget, we think we can survive until we get a big hit or are able to cultivate a really nice sized audience that can help fund our development. And that's everything. Oh, good. That was 5 minutes.
You did it. You made it.
All right.
Nice work.
Do you have any questions?
We did. We got a couple that came in. So the first one was from Eric. Eric, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, I see games. It sounds like you've got a couple of different options there. But I'm wondering, how are you going to stand out? And you said you're interested in these short-term weekend type games. Brett actually had some good comments of appeal to the investor, because that's what you need to say is this is where we're getting traction. We think that we can get success in these kind of games. We've found people are receptive to whatever, sort of thing you want to sell, as opposed to, oh, we tried some things that didn't work out, but we just want to keep trying. So focus on
your question.
Reach. What is the market that distinguishes you from all the other millions of games out there? So I'm just making a statement rather than that's what you need to focus on in the pitch.
Yeah. So to answer that question, that's actually my first two slides. This stuff right here is what we're standing out with. Most video games being sold on these storefronts look absolutely terrible. They are typically put together from various off-the-shelf assets from asset stores, from Unity and Unreal Engine's libraries, and they are often not very fun to play. Simply by making a product that has bare minimum standards of quality, I think we're already standing up over 90% of the competition. After that, we need to figure out marketing, which is something we are currently looking for from some business partner or someone who can help us with making it.
If quality is the selling point, then you should probably make that stand out clear, because I missed it. And it looks like the way Brett was phrasing his question, he might have missed it too, as to what is the investor seeing as what makes you distinguished?
I would say it's just the fact that we're able to ship. We are already shipping products. The thing is that we just need to try and ship projects that are more appealing to a larger audience.
Okay, well, thanks for the question. And I think that's a good back and forth. Brett, I saw you weighed in with two. The first one, I think Eric started addressing, and then the second one as well. Brett, you want to share your thoughts and engage a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I just, mine wasn't really a question. It was just, if this was for an investor pitch, I think they would be a little in need of some additional information about the actual opportunity. So I would want to see actual market size numbers. You're saying you already have some sales or traction. So, what kind of number is that? And then I think I heard that you were looking for funding of some sort, but you got to be more specific exactly how much you're looking for and exactly what you will do with that investment and what milestone you'll expect to reach at the end of spending that money. Those are the kind of things that the investors want to hear. So I just feel like a lot of good information was in there. It's just not in the normal kind of standard flow that investors are looking to see. So I really like pitches that just check all the quick boxes at the beginning, really give a quick contextual overview, and then backfill with more of the detail, like things that you were talking about, to once everybody's kind of on the same page. So you don't want to have people ask questions like, why are you different? That should have been clear really early and then often throughout the pitch. So yeah, but all the pieces are there. I think it just needs a shake it up a little bit.
Thank you, Brett. My longer version of this pitch actually has some market numbers that you might find interesting. So specifically, this is the graph I'd like to show people. The video game industry is currently making more money than Hollywood, and being able to capture even a small sliver of that market can get a very good payout. Our current estimate is that we would be able to make a hit that earns $10 million after 5 years or less. The main benefit we have here actually is that digital distribution has extremely low overhead. We are no longer having to put these things on cartridges or print them on CDs and ship them out to people. We can just put it on the store and people can download it. And the only distribution cost we have is the 30% royalty cut that Steam and other marketplaces take.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Does
think
that answer your question?
that helps. Yeah. And I think that should be more front and center in your pitch is the numbers, and don't forget to put where you got the numbers. Always cite the sources for those so people can go back and check them. And then I would say with the, you talk about the ease and the frictionless digital distribution, but that also means like there's a billion other people trying to do what you're doing. So again, you got to show like why what you're doing is more defensible. I think I put in the comment there, you mentioned that one of your differentiators is the quality of the look and feel and the motion and all of that. So I felt like show us like right side by side, show us an example of one of those really bad ones, and then yours right next to it. Otherwise, we kind of have to take your word for it. The investors are not necessarily gamers, right? So you can't assume that we know what's good graphics and what's bad graphics.
Mhm.
Really good feedback. So thanks for weighing in, Brett, and Thomas, thanks for jumping to the other deck to show a little bit more. There were a few more questions. So Thomas, feel free to peruse. People are asking about the market and things, but we've hit your 10 minutes. So, but great job. I think you covered a lot, really interesting and potentially challenging topics. So well done, Thomas. Thanks for taking us through it and sharing with everybody.
Awesome. So up next, we have Brittney Hayes with SegoEd. Brittney, oh, there you are. I see you. So you can go ahead and take control and bring up the deck and go ahead. And as Brittney's going, I'll start looking for questions in the comment thread.
Thank you, Andy. Are you all able to, to see my screen? Perfect. Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Midday Connect today. I'm super excited to talk to you more about our platform, SegoEd. But really, we're more than just a platform. Our team is on a mission to improve student engagement and completion rates in the higher educational space. Now, for me, this is a real passion project, as I was actually once an unengaged student who dropped out of college. I did eventually go back, but I know firsthand the hardships that come with leaving an institution without a degree and how hard it is to go back. So I've now made it my mission to help institutions increase their engagement initiatives and keep students in school. So Levi was so kind to touch on some of the challenges facing modern education. The landscape has really been changing, especially since COVID-19. He kind of touched on that enrollment cliff that we're facing. The 40% of students dropping out of college every year actually has an economic impact of $3.8 billion every year for universities and colleges. So this is a huge number. A recent study by Inside Higher Education found that only 30% of students feel engaged with their classes and coursework, and we know that engagement leads to retention. Younger generations in particular are becoming super disillusioned with higher education, with only 51% of planning on pursuing a four-year education. And we also know that younger generations are really interested in real-world applicable skills, so things like high-impact practices. But unfortunately, there are unsystematic applications of high-impact practices happening in higher ed, which has been shown to have not as much of a benefit. For those of you who do not know what high-impact practices are, so these are 11 highly researched practices that have been shown when to be incorporated into a student's curriculum to improve retention and completion rates. So these are real-world skills, things like building an e-portfolio, working in a group, doing service learning, working with your community, and so on. So at SegoEd, we are a comprehensive data management, visualization, assessment, and messaging platform. We are completely customizable and can configure our system to any institution's unique messaging, needs, or hierarchy. A few of the solutions that we're really proud of, first, demographic data. We can look at the means of students in any way an institution would like. So this helps them understand if there is an unrepresented student group that is not getting served with engagement properly. We also allow for real-time adjustments. One of our main competitors has a 4-year gap between when they understand what's happening in these students' lives. But SegoEd can be run semesterly, allowing us to make an actionable difference in real time. We also offer super efficient data collection. We only need 6 respondents per course to accurately gauge what is happening as far as engagement. One of our competitors competitors needs 1,000 data points. So 6 makes it super efficient for the university. And last, we are a course design assessment tool that is drilling all the way down into the section level of an institution, but we are not assessing faculty teaching methods. So it's really important for us to maintain faculty autonomy, but still allow the institution to know what's happening in the courses. So our customer base right now is colleges and universities, rather large size. We are mainly talking to academic affairs offices, but there are also a lot of departments and administration that fall under our umbrella, such as student success, diversity, equity, inclusion, assessments, and institutional research. Why do they care? We've touched on this $3.8 billion loss. Public universities in particular experience a lower than average completion rate of only 50%. We know that engagement leads to retention. We offer speed and efficiency. We offer systematic engagement analysis. And while our competitors are looking at the institution as a whole, we are looking at the institution as a whole, but we are also looking at college, department, course, and section for overall understanding of engagement. So our platform was rolled out at Utah Valley University last semester, university-wide, which is really exciting for us. It was developed in 2017 by an inventing team there. We have a couple quotes from the Associate Vice President for Engaged Learning, which I won't go ahead and read all those just in sake of time, but they have seen a lot of benefits and improvement in their engagement initiatives and their course success. Below, we have some UVU outcomes, and this is what we're really talking about when we say systematic application. They found that one serving learning course plus one undergraduate research course equals a 95% more likely chance to persist to the next semester, which is huge. They even found that just one service learning course, which is an umbrella of high impact practice courses, can equal a 30% more likely chance to complete your degree. And that's what we're really about at SegoEd. We want to improve completion rates for universities. We want to improve student success, institutional standing, and overall engagement. So that is it. Thank you so much for your time, and we can open it up to questions now.
Excellent. Hey, thanks, Brittney. While we're waiting for some questions to populate in the, oh, sorry, Raj, I think I said that to you instead of the group. Go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat. Brittney, what is the major obstacles you're facing right now as you're working on Sego?
Our main obstacle has been development, and our product back end is complete, but we do not have a front end demo yet. So having conversations with institutions, and we can talk about what we offer, but as far as a demo, we've still been kind of slacking on that. So how to best show our system and get these universities on board while we're still ironing out our development process has been our biggest obstacle.
Excellent. Eric, I think you had a question or maybe some feedback.
Well, it was just a sort of a statement. It came together over the course of your pitch, what you were doing, but I'd like to see you say it early as to why what it is you're doing, that you're trying to improve retention rates for schools, and that it's going to be reviewed by whatever groups in the schools do these kinds of reviews of how the programs are working. That way, as an investor, I know, oh, you're going to be selling to these people. This is what this is who your target is, and then you get into the market size at that point, because the investors are looking for what are they going to get out of it.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions for Brittney or feedback?
I guess I was just looking for what's the price tag of this problem to society or to the stakeholders, and then how does that eventually lead to the price that you would choose for your product? I'd like to see some link between the pain and the and the Band-Aid, right? So what is that?
Absolutely. And we do know the $3.8 billion last year. We know there is a lot of economic impact. On that last slide that I had with the UVU outcomes, there was a believe a $3.5 million economic impact saved by this service learning course. So not only is it improving university standing, it's also just improving our society as a whole. With college students making $21,000, or college dropouts making $21,000 less than university graduates, it's having an impact on our economy. But as far as like sales, universities are losing money. Levi talked about Boise State losing $1 million a semester, I believe it was. So they are looking for engagement initiatives. We do know that engagement helps students stay in school. So that's where we're going with that. But yeah, I agree that I need to add a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and the one slide you had there towards the end with lots of different graphics and numbers. There was the 95 figure in there, I think, and then the 1 in 3 or something. So those were super compelling numbers, but very, sort of lost in that sea of numbers. So I would just maybe change that slide, just put a giant 95% on the slide, and then describe what that impact is, and then try to link it back to that number that you mentioned, 3.1 million or whatever that was.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That infographic we have, there's a lot on there.
Yeah,
so kind of parsing that out would make sense.
And you can always share that with people later, but don't make them search while they're trying to listen to you. Don't make them try to search for data points like that. Just hammer it in their face.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Rob, you had a question. We'll make it the last one. Then nice transition over to you. But go ahead and ask Brittney your question, and then you can take it away after that.
Yeah, I was just curious, as you were describing it, if there might be other markets that could be relevant for this. I know that the ed tech market has a long sales cycle and can be tough to break into even with a demo. So I just wondered if you had any other markets in your mind that maybe you could test.
Yeah, that is definitely something we've been considering, especially because overall we're a data management platform. We have messaging capabilities, visualization, data management. So we could be used for things like employee feedback surveys, where different companies need to actually see what's happening in their customer base, or HR uses where employee surveys are sent out to gauge not student success, but employee success is another capability that we've been exploring.
Awesome. Well, great work. Thanks for sharing. It's fun to see the updates. Yeah. Okay, well, our last presenter is Scott Rafferty. So he knows Taylor, I think, well, but Taylor's not here. So Scott has to deal with Andy and me. Scott recently presented his idea branch at 1MC, but I happen to be out of town that week. So I'm excited to see it. I know that branch is kind of an machine, an ML platform. So Scott, why don't you put up your slides and practice that 5-minute pitch you've been working on?
Sounds great. All right. We're good, right? Everybody can see us?
Yep.
All right. Well, my name is Scott Rafferty. I am the co-founder and CEO of Branch. We are a machine learning development platform that brings the capabilities to build really robust, powerful machine learning to regular developers. The premise that we started with is that machine learning is a failed technology. And the reason why we say this is that for the 20 years that it's been the thing, it is not nearly as ubiquitous or easy, and it's not, and it sucks, and it's stupid that it's not ubiquitous and easy. There's a venture firm in the Bay Area that calls it forever software, that it's timeless. And while that is true, and there's an immense amount of power in this kind of technology, the ability to stand up machine learning in most organizations is either A, prohibitive, cost prohibitive, or B, an outsized risk that they're asked to take before knowing what their ROI looks like in the first place. And so so why is it that after almost 20 years that Deloitte says over 70% of ML efforts in an organization fail, right? So think of machine learning as a big production line, and each with several steps and stations and processes and tools. Each one of those takes time, investment, people, and has to work properly in order for everything to work. And that complexity, sorry about this, my screen just blinked out. Let me fix this. All right. And that that production line is expanding in complexity and tooling costs. Just for example, Y Combinator in the last 3 cohorts has led in over 40 ML ops companies. And so, you know, in my last company I was at, we were at Jane. I was at Jane. I was over all of the operations at Jane.com, and we stood up a machine learning team. And just tooling, just to get started, we ended up racking up a bill of $20,000 a month just for a small team to start, just in tooling. And so, you know, the complexity and inaccessibility of machine learning, despite it being a now mature, quote unquote, mature technology, is actually greater than it's ever been. And so the reason why this happens is that within the ML ops space, there's this production system, right? And this production system has a bunch of different stops. And most companies never make it past the labeling and formatting and into the embedding stage. And this embedding is kind of the key place where you can vector against your data and you can start running machine learning models and all that kind of stuff. And so we decided that, you know, there's going to be a world in which things are aggregated and flattened, right? If you look at the history of most foundational fundamental technologies, what they do is they exploded complexity before somebody comes along and aggregates and flattens them. Think about what Oracle did for databases, and think about what Twilio did for VoIP, and what, let's say, Stripe did for payments, and what AWS did for cloud. If any of you remember the time before those types of companies, you had multiple people, multiple tools, multiple processes in order to do that single thing. And then they came up and they put it together and they said, here, make it accessible so that regular engineers can do this thing. And they take that capability and transfer it from the specialist to the generalist. That's what those companies do. And that's what we're looking to do with Branch. We believe in the premise that there is going to be an Oracle for ML. There's going to be an AWS for ML. It doesn't exist now, and that's what we've been building at Branch for the last almost 2 years. So what does it look like? We're fundamentally changing 15 years of kind of consensus thinking around the processes and systems around machine learning. And you know, we've built this thing called a task agnostic embedded space, which, you know, not to replace one black box with another. What that does is it allows a user to immediately embed their data. And we use a combination of AI, active learning, deep learning, pre-trained models to start to determine context around data points. And what this looks like in practice and in the wild is that if you have, say, for example, 1 million pieces of unstructured, messy, gunky data that you would like to do some work with, per 1 million data points, we generally need context on about 150 of those before we can say, all right, well, we know enough to be able to start running some models. And so what this does is it takes that exercise of trying to clean up and get large data sets ready and puts us into this task agnostic embedded space. And instead of it taking months, weeks, or months in order to start running models against that data, you can start to do it in an afternoon. As a matter of fact, we have a community of engineers that we've started to put together. We're on the Slack group, and a lot of them are using this in their work in their different companies. We have people from like Amazon, Apple, Santa Fe Institute, Bloomberg, that are all starting to use Branch in their workflow. And I regularly get messages from these beta users of saying, hey, look, I just ran with this data set that would have taken me 3 to 4 weeks in order to just get ready to work with. And I literally was able to do it in like 3 hours, and this is amazing. And so what we believe is that there are a couple of things that are required for there to be a big incumbent in this world. One is workability of data, which is how we view the task agnostic embedded space addressing that challenge. And then the second one is interoperability of data. And I won't go into that too much, but it's essentially using our AI tool. We have an AI tool that goes into the data set and says, hey, based on what we can tell right now, you can also run these additional models and it indexes against Hugging Face and pulls in all the different models that you could run against that data set.
We're about 6 minutes, Scott. So we're a little bit over. I don't know if you have anything else you want to close out with before we maybe jump to some people.
No, that's pretty good. Essentially what we're looking at is that any organization that has a data feeder or data lake and a good engineer will be able to start running machine learning at an affordable cost in a low risk way without having to risk tens or hundreds of thousands, in Jane's case, millions of dollars. So yeah, sorry, I should have tightened that up a little bit. My bad.
All right. Scott's got a pitch on Thursday, so this is a good warm-up practice for it. This is what we do. We got to practice. It's hard to do anything in 5 minutes, it seems. So good job. I see Brett and Eric have some feedback. I don't know if anybody else has. We know Brett and Eric have weighed in, and I think they've got some good feedback, but I also think there's a chance for other folks. Sometimes there's people out there that have a thought but don't feel like sharing. So encourage that. And if we don't get any hands raised or anything real quick, we'll turn it over to Brett and Eric to follow up.
I have a quick question. Do any of the like Microsoft for startups or AWS for startups like provide any credits that could be used to kind of give an entry point to your offering or to help people get spun up on some of these storage?
Great question. So yes, the answer is yes. We've talked to both like GCP and AWS and Microsoft Azure team. We're currently kind of leaning in with Microsoft with the AWS, because one of the architectural decisions that we had to make was about data custody, making sure that companies have complete control of data. So essentially what we have is a push deploy option that has been tailored fit for right now for AWS, where we push deploy into a Docker, into a container in their AWS environment. It runs everything that with the data never leaves their custody. And AWS has been really great at helping us figure this out. And Microsoft Azure and GCP, not so much. So we do plan to really lean on that AWS partnership as soon as it kind of comes to fruition, for sure.
And then if someone else has a question, they could jump in, but just curious, technically LLMs are hot right now. You're talking about machine learning. Can you give a layman's distinction about the difference and why, if they're not getting into LLMs, like they still need your tool to support what they're doing there, or vice versa?
Yeah, okay. So I know there's some machine learning guys on here and we could debate this for hours. So I'll kind of give you my interpretation, right? The story of machine learning and being able, or of LLMs and being able to work with LLMs and within the AI and ML environment is really a story of embeddings, of how do you embed data and how do you manage your embeddings, right? The better, as embedding technology has progressed, ML and AI has progressed. The challenge is, like, so for example, OpenAI, their number one growing part of their business right now is their embedding library. And the thing is, it is incredibly difficult to use that if you don't have domain expertise. So if you're a regular engineer and you want to go pull in those embeddings to start working with your data, it's going to be a really tough go. And so for us, we look at it in terms of like, we're building out an embedding environment that helps people work with the data they already have, to become directionally correct and get a general understanding of what they can do with that data. And then down the road, they can start going into that, like bringing in all that outside LLM corpus of data information into their environment to start working with. But the way that we look at it, the difference is, for us, ML is like, in this most simplistic form, ML is essentially, I have this current set of data that I have that we know, and we want to do some sort of analysis or produce some sort of outcome with. For us, AI and LLMs really sit in the world of generative, future forward-facing looking stuff. And so we deliberately don't call ourselves an AI company because that's not really our game. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah. So like strategy for managing my data with the most up-to-date technology and getting away from SQL queries kind of feels where I land on what you're doing.
Yeah, and the way to think about it is like, we are an embedding as a service. If you have that data, you can embed it immediately rather than having to do all that pre-work before embedding and running against it. We're embedding as a service that lets you embed it immediately and start working with it pretty quickly.
Sweet, thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I think great discussion there, and this is being recorded, so Scott might be even worth going back and listen to how you describe it. I think the comments from Brett and Eric both about simplicity and getting to it. So I think you cut to the chase, and there's some really interesting stuff in here. Max, thanks for the questions too. This is really great. I think we're at our time here. I think a few people might have had to drop off because we end normally a little bit earlier, but I'll toss it over to Andy. Thanks, Scott, for presenting and sharing. And Andy, thanks for having us and letting me co-host with you.
Yeah, no, this is fun. Thanks, everyone. Great job, presenters. If you want to engage with some of the people that are providing feedback, I seek out their contact information. A lot of people have put their LinkedIn into the chat. But thank you to the presenters. Thank you to our sponsors, Kiln, Startup Stack, and we will see you guys all next week at the next Midday Connect and at 1 Million Cups, hopefully on Wednesday.